good rest during the holiday break. Um, Before we start, I'm sure you all are familiar with this, but just as a reminder, a few housekeeping. These are the icons in case you want to mute, unmute, use the chat, raise your hand. Feel free to interact, or even the emojis, we love to see them. So definitely use them. And then if you have any question, the second one from the right bottom is the chat. Use that, and then someone will get back to you. We will begin today by a few agenda items that's like talking about the PSCP board member purpose, a few announcements. There is like a very exciting announcement, I'm going to say that. And then after that, we'll pass the floor to Rachel, and she will present about proving the difference, how to identify, measure, and realize intended results. So PSCP board is committed to bringing quality value information. It means sharing insight, best practices, resources that make a difference in the change management area. And we want to connect, exchange ideas, learn from each other, and just make sure that those folks that are going through change are set up for success, are being successful. And our purpose direction is, as a community, is we are a group of agnostic change management professionals. We are here to just learn from each other, grow, share our experiences and knowledge. And what we're trying to do here as a PSCP, we're working towards becoming a nonprofit, to register ourselves as a nonprofit organization. We're about 20% there, woohoo! But we could totally use your help. So this will help us expand our impact, better serve the community. And if you want to support us, you can scan the QR code. I'm also going to put the URL in the chat. So that's the GoFundMe. Make sure that if you're contributing, to include your name. In a second, I'm going to say why, and that's the excitement. The excitement. See, I'm so excited. I can't even say it. The excited news. I'll tell you shortly about it. But that's the link. Take a picture of the QR code. And the exciting news is that as part of our journey towards becoming a registered nonprofit, we want to create a meaningful way for the community to participate and feel excited about supporting the PSCP. So we're thrilled to share that all donors, starting from today, will be entered into a raffle to win one seat in a ProSci 3-day change management certification program. It's being delivered virtually, so wherever you are, there's no limitation. This is a highly valued, globally organized, recognized certification, and we're incredibly grateful to ProSci for generously making this opportunity possible for the community. The raffle opens today. It will end in April, when we have our other webinar. And in case you're interested, here are some information about the ProSci certification. Put them in the chat. And again, don't forget to include your name if you're contributing to GoFundMe, because those are the names that will be used for the random draw. Now that I'm a little bit calmer, let's move on. So one of the most powerful ways we grow as a community is by sharing opportunities to connect. So if you know any upcoming events, conference, workshop, gatherings, anything, please put it in the chat. Let us all use each other's knowledge and network. And also, if during the holiday break, I don't know, you read through a book, a podcast, something that you think it would be useful for everyone, put it in the chat. Someone last time put Change Signal, and since then I've been listening to that podcast. I love it. So thank you so much for that. And if you have any other resources, please feel free to share that. Another good news, by attending today's webinar, you're eligible to receive PMI PDUs. So at the end of the session, we'll share a survey link, and make sure to complete it. That way you will receive your PDUs. Another exciting news. See, that's why I can talk today, because it's just one good news after another. So PSCP is partnering with the Organization Excellence Subcommittee of the Committee on Performance-Based Management of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Office. It's a mouthful, so we're just going to call it ASHTO. And then PSCP reached out to Gary Van Soch, and he's a member of the Organization Excellence Subcommittee, encourage members to attend today's webinar and join the PSCP. Rachel Bonds, she is our speaker today, and she's also a member of the Organization Excellence. The PSCP loves to partner and collaborate with other government groups, and it's just like one example of it. So anyone from ASHTO joining us, hello, welcome, shout out to you all. Feel free to use your perfect emoji that you like, your favorite emoji in the chat, to just show us that you're here. And we're so happy to have you here. Oh, thank you for the heart. Yes, look at that. Taza, David, Lauren, Amanda. Hi to everyone. Michelle, do you want to say
I was going to jump in and say I saw David. There's David in the chat. So David and I go way, way back. So it's so good to see him here.
Oh, hi, David. Hi,
Way,
everyone.
way back.
Yeah, it's been a minute, David. Believe it or not.
Minute? Just a minute?
Just a minute, yeah.
I think it's been a long time.
Yeah.
No, I just put in the chat, I missed attending the meetings. I'm glad I could make today.
Awesome, great. Glad to see you here.
It's lovely seeing you all. Welcome. I'm sure it's going to be a great session. You're going to all love it. Without any further ado, I'm thrilled to welcome Rachel Bonds, who's joining us today. Rachel is an experienced organizational change management practitioner with over 15 years of success leading change initiative across both federal and state sectors of the public domain. Currently serving at the Montana Department of Transportation, Rachel brings a deep understanding of human behavior and organizational dynamics, backed by a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology. Her work focuses on guiding teams through complex transition with empathy, structure, and strategic insight. So without any further ado, Rachel, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us.
Morning, guys. It's exciting to just have the opportunity to talk with other practitioners and impart some knowledge I have, as well as learn from you. So we're definitely going to be utilizing reactions today, as well as the chat. So I would love to hear from you guys as well. I'm just in the thick of it with all of you guys. So I'm just another fellow practitioner navigating their way in the public sector on, complex changes. So I am from Montana Department of Transportation. So luckily my example actually isn't like transportation specific. So I think it'll relate to a lot of you guys who are also in other areas. I do live in Helena, Montana. I do have some snow at my house. It only recently came 3 days ago. I literally had those 50-degree days as well that you guys are all having. It's been a really weird winter, like not seeing snow at all in January. Really weird. Can't tell what time of year it is. So, okay, so let's get started. I'm excited. So, this presentation's really about how to identify, measure, and realize those intended outcomes. It's something that I feel really personal, just because it's a real struggle, I think, that we, as practitioners, that we constantly find ourselves in situations where people are thinking about what's right in front of them and what they just need to get done real quick and just get this launched. And when we take the moment to really identify what it is that we are trying to get, and what they really want to get out of this, we're set up for such better success. So I'm going to share with you guys a story with a group, and I really hope you enjoy it. So let's get started. So how do you define success for this project? What does success look like for this project? Please use a reaction if you've ever gotten blank stares from your stakeholders when you ask this question. These questions actually, while important, we want these answers, but I get absolute blank eyeballs back at my face when we ask this question, either one of them. They're now at a point where I just cringe when I hear them because I know that it doesn't land. And so what we're going to first go through is really how do you identify and what are some techniques that you can use to really flesh out those intended outcomes. I'm glad I'm not the only one who struggles with these phrases. That's awesome. So my story starts with I got approached by our legal team, actually, contacting me for change management services. It was really exciting that they contacted me because I had just finished giving over 50 presentations when I had started with transportation. I gave 50 presentations throughout the agency. So I hit upwards of like 1,000 people in the agency, sharing about what the value of change management is and that they could understand what it is that I do and what I don't do. If you've ever watched Office Space, a lot of them were really freaking out that they thought I was coming to change their job. And so I really had to dispel that understanding. So when legal contacted me, I was thrilled because I knew that it was actually landing with them. So they contacted me, the chief legal officer, his name is Chris. He's the one who reached out and said, hey, we have this change happening. And I think based on your presentation, we could really use your services. So of course the border collie style in me was like, oh my God, this is really great. I'm super excited. What is it? I don't care. Let's go. Like a little bit of like Leslie Knope in there too. I was just like so excited. It was like one of my first times where someone really proactively came and reached out. So really excited. Well, then they proceeded to, we met for a meeting and they're sharing with me the background. They did a great job on background. So they said, our legal team has had 72 cases where employees have violated our policies in some way or another. So the legal team was dealing with cases that ended up going to hearings. And so 72 cases in a single year, that was in 2024, they found themselves staff violating policies. So policies included IT use, IT security, drug and alcohol on premise, state vehicle use, employee conduct. That's our biggest one that we like to violate. So those are some examples. What they found was that these cases would end up going to hearings, and they found that the agency found themselves on the losing side of the argument. As you guys very well experience, and I bet you some of you guys are in these buckets where you've been working for the agency or in the public sector for 25 years. Several of these policies have been developed after someone came on board. So if you don't get hit in the onboarding process, chances are you're not looking at that policy ever. I mean, how many of us really love to read policies every day? So they were losing these arguments because staff just didn't know that they were violating these policies. They weren't aware that they existed and they didn't know what was in them. So what they were standing up was a workflow where an email would go out to everybody in the agency. So we have 2,200 in Montana Department of Transportation, and 600 of them are in the field at all times. And Montanans in general just don't like tech. Even more so than I think the general public. So sending out an email at the beginning of every quarter, asking an employee to read and acknowledge the policy. So we were doing this at the start of every quarter, and that they would have 60 days to acknowledge that policy. So once they shared, this is what they were standing up. We said, okay, it sounds like we need these refresher policies. We need staff to know them. So this is what they were standing up. And luckily, I actually had about a few months before we were going live with it. This wasn't happening next week. I have had one of those just last month. So we had some time. I said, okay, this is really great background. So now I'm having a conversation more with Chris. I want to find out, well, what is it that you want to get out of this? And I can't ask him that, how do you define success, Chris? I got to ask that in a different way. So what he says is like, how do we get people to care about this new process? And so this is a brand new agency practice. We've never done this before in the past. A lot of people, we all know what happens with emails. You ignore them, especially if they're full of like jargon that doesn't make sense to you. You're like, bye. Like, it sounds like I don't need to care. So he wants to know, how do I get people to care? As a practitioner, like we can answer that right away, right? My wheels are already turning on, okay, what kind of communication do we need to do? Oh, great, there's really no training if all you have to do is just select a button real quick. So my wheels are turning there, but I want to know, well, Chris, what do you want to get? What do you want to get out of this? I want to understand his why. He's like, well, we'll have a better argument in hearings. He's kind of like, Rachel, I just told you. I say, okay, so I totally get that. Is that it? Is that all you want to get from this? We just need to turn this process on and hope people use it. Like, is that all you really want to get? He's like, well, yeah, staff can't say they didn't know about a policy. So I ask again, is that all you want to get? So now the factor's coming in. He's looking at only what's right in front of him, and I can tell. And so what I want to really do is flush out what it is that he really wants to get out of this. And is there more to squeeze? Is there more juice there that we can get? So you can tell that the way I'm asking this, it isn't, how do you define success? This is taken from the practice of the 5 whys. And we do need to keep asking the why. Kind of. So let's start using the chat now. Think about putting yourself in his shoes, or maybe a process that you have. Use one word, put it in the chat for how you would describe to someone just asked you why over and over again. Well, why do you feel that way? Or how come that? Why does that make you think that way? Or why do you do it that way? If someone were to use that 5 why approach exactly the way it is, use one word to describe how you'd feel. Oh yeah, see, so many of you are like, thank you, Alyssa. Kaza, annoyed, irritated, toddler, like, yeah, go away. Like I'm done. Megan's like, no, I'm good with this. I don't want to go anymore. Defensive, absolutely. I think that's probably my first go-to. Like, why are you judging my process? Frustrated, also being unheard, right? Because Chris is like, I'm telling you why, right? So when we're fleshing out intended outcomes, it's about being thoughtful about how do you get to that root cause. Like the 5 whys, that methodology that was developed by Toyota, like for Lean Six Sigma, it is about identifying root cause analysis. I like using the approach of 5 whys and keep like pulling at that thread or find a new thread. I like to add a different spin on it and not just ask why or how do you define success. I like being really creative with the types of questions in order to really flesh out those outcomes. So I like using 2 additional techniques that I can recommend to you guys is also like appreciative inquiry, just asking things in the more positive frame of mind in order to get there. You can also use motivational interviewing, like what's in it for you, in order to get this intended outcome. So asking why is valuable. How we ask it, I think, is like the craft that we all try to work on as practitioners. So thanks so much for all of you guys. Like with the 1 words, I think you're all spot on. I think it's fantastic. So here's some things to try instead. Here's a couple of them I'll throw up. And then I would love for you guys in the chat to add more what you like. And then Masa also added an AI prompt. So if you're like, oh, I'm kind of fresh out of ideas on what phrases to say, use AI. AI is your best friend in this sense to help provide more questions. So here's a couple that I like to use. And first of all, what I do like to say, because I am naturally inquisitive and I do tend to ask a lot of questions. And so I usually tell folks right away in the get-go, I'm like, look, I want to solve this together with you. So we're on the same team. I want to solve this together with you. Can you hang on while I ask some questions? It's just my preface to say, I'm going to annoy you. I need you to stay with me for a moment. And so I think also saying that right away in the beginning is saying, when you say, I want to solve this together with you, it really helps them see, like, I'm not judging you, I'm with you on this. And the more you can preface it, I think it goes a long way. I've always seen it go a long way. Like, just hang on with me. I'm going to annoy you for a bit with my questions. They get why, because I get to the why. I get to that final outcome. I'm like, then they get why, and they're good with it. Here's another one I really like. What's something positive you want people to notice as a result? That one's really interesting, I think, because we don't really think about what are the positive benefits. So immediately we tend to think like, well, what is it that we need to get done? It's like, well, what's a positive outcome that we want people to see after this is all said and done? It's just another way to really find out what it is that they want to get from this. Why are we doing this? Yes, it informs your change your communication strategy, but you need to find out what they want to get out of it. Here's another one. What's the payoff for you? And what's the payoff for your team? What's the payoff for the agency? And right now you can totally tell with this example with policy acknowledgement and with Chris, like he's only thinking just how to solve that immediate issue within hearings. What I want to know is what's the payoff for you, right? How does your team benefit? What does the agency actually gain from standing up this process? There's probably more that we can get than just, having a better argument in hearings, right? And what capabilities or strengths do you want to build through this effort? It's another way of just asking, what do we want to see looking different after this is all said and done? So there's a couple of them right there that you guys can use. I'm really curious from you guys as practitioners, like fill me up, like tell me what are questions that you think work really well for you, and put them in the chat. I would love to know what you guys like to say. Don't be shy. No, Leah, I like that. I flipped the script entirely and asked what could make this worse. I like it because it's like, well, if we don't do this, what's the risk? Right? So you're getting more like understanding why, what do we want to get from this? Like, okay, let's make sure then how we implement really avoids those things. Yeah, what's the goal of the goal? Like, I feel like that you're close. Tell me more about, I think that's leaving it so open-ended, right? Yes or no questions, you're not going to get what you need to get out of this. Yeah, exactly, Jennifer, right? Echoing what I'm saying is like, it's just so open-ended. Yeah, what would be different? If we were successful, what would be different? So John, like, that's one of my favorite ones I'm going to talk about next. Ooh, Michelle, that's cool. Like, how will this reduce time, cost, or improve quality, right? So you're kind of giving them some prompts, like some places to go and think about, right? Helping them get more creative and thoughtful about what we could glean. What benefits will employees see, right? More so than just yourself. What can others get from this? Yeah, see, Mas is the same. Like there's a particular question that has worked well for me so many times. I like that, Wendy. Did anything happen? That is a reason you need to change. Like, did anything happen? Like, if you can't name that, how successful can you be in the future, really getting intended outcomes? What would make things better and smoother? Yeah, right. Let's dig out. Helen, I think that's great. Like it's saying, let them in on it. Like, and I think I've had to probably do that. I'm like, look, I'm really this might be annoying. It's really to find out what is all available. Let's not, let's squeeze everything we can out of this. Let's just find out if there's room for more. Fantastic. Now you guys have even more questions that you can use. There's also that AI prompt that Masa put, further back in the chat. You're welcome to try that one out as well. I ask AI for prompts like that all the time to help, especially if I'm already annoyed myself when I'm having to go into those conversations. So here's what I said to Chris. So going back to policy acknowledgement, this is the one, because he can tell like the annoyed factor is already coming in. And so I'm like, okay, look, is that really all you want to get? So I ask him in this phrase, I say this all went really well. Like, let's fast forward to the future. This all went really well. What's now different? What's different? Well, we get our time back. Now I got him thinking differently. Okay, that's nice. How come? Here's the annoyance already poking in, right? And he's like, well, we'd have less cases. And I knew from Chris at that time, he's like, Rachel, like, can't you put 2 and 2 together? I'm like, right. So it's, humor me, Chris, what would it take to have less cases? He's like, well, staff would be adhering to the policies. Well, now we have a whole different thing. First, he's telling me, okay, we need to just stand this up, select, acknowledge, make sure that the process is turned on. That's our return on investment. Now we're talking more than just acknowledging the policy. Now we're talking about staff adhering the policy. And on top of it, we're talking about how legal is going to get their time back. So I just now flushed out more intended outcomes just from asking more questions and in the right way. Even if it's a little annoying, I really just would love to like get that encouragement vibe across the screen. You know that you're getting them to a better place. So it's always worth it to ask and keep going. So here's our intended outcomes that I just fleshed out. So first he's asking, okay, let's stand up the process so we can boost legal defensibility while promoting a professional and safe workplace. What I also did talk to him about, I'm like, okay, well, if staff are adhering to policies, like going to that question, like, well, what does the agency benefit? Standing up that process actually shows to the us as agency staff that the agency is concerned and cares about having a professional and safe workplace. So there is benefit to all staff, not just to know and not just select a button and move on, but there's this intrinsic reward there that we're promoting a safe and professional workplace, which was greatly informing to our strategy when we communicated this out. So that's the first one. He was like, let's just stand up the process, right? Well, if we want the process to be good and not something we did for just 1 quarter, we need people to actually acknowledge and select that button like every quarter. So that way we have even more legal defensibility. So that was a really important outcome because that greatly informed also how we went about tracking success for the project. And our last one, if we adhere to the policies, well, this frees up legal and HR's workload. You might say, well, Rachel, where does HR come into this? Well, once Chris said that not only does this team get his time back, it's because we need staff to adhere to policies. At that moment, I knew we need to bring in an additional sponsor, because he's not thinking about it, because his team isn't responsible for employee behavior, not like HR is. So this now, just by asking more questions and flushing out intended outcomes, we now had to bring in an additional sponsor. Well, luckily for us, we had a brand new HR administrator start just 3 weeks prior to this project when I met with them. And so naturally, the HR administrator wanted nothing to do with it. Go figure. It's just what you guys typically deal with sponsorship, right? Like, it's kind of a revolving door. So we knew right away, because we knew we weren't going to get HR's sponsorship and interest in the project, we knew that adherence was going to be a difficult outcome to achieve. And that really helped Chris have better understanding with his team too, that, well, if we don't get adherence, then there's a likelihood that our caseload might stay high. It might not, might not go down as much as we think just from pressing the button, because we're not doing as much for adherence. So it was really helpful from the get-go working with the sponsor and understanding what our intended outcomes are, and then also what is the likelihood that we can achieve them. So that was a fun part of the experience. We did keep her informed and letting her know what had played out, but her and her team like ended up playing no active role in the project itself. So we really focused our time on like more on outcome 1 and outcome number 2. Okay, so I'm going to pause real quick just see if there's any questions here. Because next what we're going to talk about is how do we measure these things? So I don't know if Masa, if you're looking in the chat, if there's any other
There are just lots of great questions. A great, like not question for you, but questions asked from the sponsor. One question that's like from the beginning, it's not really related here. It's about those change management presentations that you shared. It was like, if you could later provide some light into it or share those, that would be great. But nothing about this one for now. I think we can move on. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so well, let's move into how do we actually measure for these outcomes. I think that's the real like crux of it too. I think this in itself, if you can flesh out intended outcomes, this is a major thing to do, and it's a great craft to have as part of a practitioner, because it's going to greatly inform how you implement that project. By having more outcomes fleshed out, we definitely implement it differently or not, and I'll talk more about why that is. So fleshing out intended outcomes, getting to that point, getting their agreement on it is key, and using those tactics to ask questions in unique ways to really flesh them out, I think is going to get you a lot of success. Okay, so how do we measure? Leading indicators. So you guys have heard of leading and lagging indicators. That terminology has probably come up for you. You might have probably heard of like KPIs, and I'm going to say some other acronyms that I really don't know, like OKRs and CPS. I think there's all kinds of them. So I'm going to stick with these 2 terms. I like these because it's just 2, and I can and I like how they interact with one another to then help measure success. So leading indicators. Yeah, inputs and outputs is probably another one. A colleague was just telling me about the other day. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's pretty simple. Leading indicators are metrics that predict future performance. We live in this world as practitioners really commonly. So we track all of the change management activities that we do because we think that they're going to measure future performance, the actual intended outcomes that we want to get. So here's some examples. So if your change management practice plans on doing a lot of town halls in your strategy, you might be tracking how much attendance is at those town halls. Because we think that if people attend a town hall, they're more likely to do the new thing, right? Maybe you're standing up a new system and you have a lot of training. Maybe there's video views, there's step-by-step guide downloads. Those are all metrics, leading indicators that say, well, if we see people engaging with the training, that we think they're more likely to utilize the system in the intended way, right? I know that we have practitioners from all kinds of agencies, so I threw in some different examples as well. So new business permits issued. So we can think about having seen someone actually sign up to have a new business in town. I live in a small town of 30,000 people, so like this would be a great leading indicator. Does a new business permit actually lead to a stronger economy, local economy? Inspections completed. We don't complete inspections for the sake of it. We complete inspections in the hopes that if we did a safety inspection, that we see the slip, trips, and falls go down for that company, or maybe, across that county or something like that. So inspections completed is a really great leading indicator. Enrollment programs for any of my folks in like health and human services. If you had, new moms and dads sign up for, a program for their newborn, maybe we'd see the hopes that things aren't, that there's a decrease in incidences, in a baby's first year or something like that. So these are examples of leading indicators, activities that we are doing that we hope that will predict what we want to see in the end. Okay, so that's leading. I'm going to shift over to now lagging indicators. So lagging indicators are metrics that measure past performance. A little bit weird to think about. So I'm going to give you some examples. So for us in transportation, the crash fatality rate is one of the most common lagging indicators that we use. So if we are widening the bend in a road or we are reshaping it, that project, we're going to use that lagging indicator, our fatality rate, to tell us whether that, did that change actually help promote, decrease that fatality rate. Maybe changing pavement, do we see a change in our crash fatality rate? Maybe if we have a ton of grant funding on seatbelt use. And so if we bump up our seatbelt use programs by 25%, do we see a decrease in fatality rate? So lagging indicators are things that already occur. Staff vacancy rate. So if we do more workforce planning recruitment activities, does the state vacancy rate change? Student graduation rates, citizen satisfaction scores, number of animals adopted, like all over the gamut. There's all kinds of lagging indicators that we can think about in our change initiatives and what we're trying to achieve. Do they produce, that final outcome, and what can we use in lagging indicators to prove the success? Crime rates is another one. So there's your two. So I'm going to go back to my story about policy acknowledgement, and I'm going to show you how I use leading and lagging indicators to measure success. So going back to our outcomes, the first one was to just stand up the system. So I really like this project. This was really fun to do this part. So one of our outcomes is to really boost legal defensibility. We need people to actually hit the acknowledge button. So like I said, all staff, they get an email at the beginning of the quarter that says, please, review this policy and select acknowledge. So we really had to measure, do people really hit the button? Well, we decided to make up our goals. So you don't have to just measure that in the end, did they hit the accept button or acknowledge? We said our goal was that we wanted the whole agency to select that button in the first campaign, 95% of staff. We decided, Chris actually said 100%. And I was like, bro, that's not going to happen. 100% is not realistic. And he's like, okay, well, let's do 95. I'm like, okay, that's really up there, but let's go for it. Well, and what we said, because it's 60 days, we're like, well, let's not just measure the end. Let's measure halfway through. So 30 days in, we said, and we just arbitrarily made it up, we wanted to see 65% of staff select that button. And then with 1 week left, with our communications that we'd be sending, that we would see 85% of staff select that button. And then we'd see that 10% jump. So those were our milestone goals. And sometimes it doesn't have to be fancy, guys. We just created a bar chart. So what you're looking at is a list of every division and district on the bottom. And the blue lines are our milestone markers. Like, how close are they at hitting the milestone? So this was halfway. And we have a Monday morning call with all of our executive leadership team. And so I created the bar chart and I gave it to Chris. I'm like, hey, I just need you to show this on your screen for like 2 minutes in that Monday morning call. That's all you need. So he does. And he's like, oh man, this lit a fire for everyone, because there's so much competition between the executive team, and they're seeing really quickly like where they stand, not only for themselves and their, who they represent, but also against everyone else. So there's definitely some serious like kind of like trash talking and, friendly trash talking to get them moving and say, okay, this is with me doing next to no effort, this is where I'm at. So they knew very clearly, okay, I need to go and talk with my management team. I need to make sure that staff are aware that this is a real thing, that this isn't a fakey email. We had done other stuff for the change management effort. Like we had a great web page, but this is how we measured whether we were going to hit our outcomes or not. Just a simple graph in Excel. Thank you, Excel. So that's one thing we did. Another leading indicator we had was getting informed. So now we're trying to track adherence. So how do we know that people aren't just selecting the button to do the thing and get it off their plate? How do we know if staff are actually adhering to the process? And what we planned to do was create these documents. So we called them key points, because I had to break the news to Chris and the policy manager. And I said, look, no one's going to read the policies. I'm like, the likelihood that someone wants to read all that, they're going to take 4 seconds to look at that legal jargon and say, no, I don't have time for that. You guys are public sector practitioners. You get it. We're busy. People are busy doing tons of work. And so I said, what if we created a one pager that was very visually, looks great, and we put just some summary points of what that policy is about. So if they were to only give you 45 seconds of their time, what would you want them to know? So again, because we fleshed out outcomes, it informed our, how we implemented the project. So we created all these documents and we're like, great, we're going to track the document downloads. It's going to tell us whether they're actually going to try and adhere to the policy. So those are 2 leading indicators. There are lagging indicators. The only real lagging indicator that we had is the actual policy acknowledgement rate. And what's really cool about this process, even though we stood it up for the first time, we created a new lagging indicator for the agency. So on an annual basis, what is our policy acknowledgement rate for these refresher policies? So we created that rate and we did track it over the whole course of the year. And so they can see really clearly how well their division or district did for that year. So we kept up with it. We informed them, kept the graphs really simple, kept the information really simple, digestible pieces that we knew that was going to sit with them. So, and you can see over the course of the year, like the approach worked. Like we got a ton of consistent acknowledgement, which was great. So we established that new lagging indicator. What I would have loved to have tracked was legal's caseload. Chris said, like, I think our caseload will go down. He said it's 72. So I know that they're tracking that number somewhere. My ability to be able to go and to the people and get it is difficult. Chris actually retired 1 month after we went live with this. No, that's not true. After the campaign, because he sent the email out. Sorry, I apologize for that. So I wasn't able to measure sustainment over a long period of time because I lost my sponsor. So what I would have loved to see is legal's caseload, their case time to resolution, and how many cases actually were sent to hearings. Because now that we have an agency-wide, well-practiced practice, we actually now have, I bet you those cases probably would have resolved faster and less would have went to hearings. So there's some of our lagging indicators that we would have measured. Back to that professional and safe workplace, would love to have statements in our employee satisfaction scores that help us know whether policy acknowledgement provided value to them. I feel that policy acknowledgement promotes an accountable professional workplace where I feel more safe because of policy acknowledgement. And actual, how many policy violations do we continually have every year? Those are all lagging indicators. So like I said, we only had one real one, which is policy acknowledgement. The rest of them are so key and important. And I can't, I really stress this one is this part of the work for me and personally, this gets the hardest, is showing these numbers and having my executive leadership care about what this really says and means. This is a very new practice for us. And man, anybody in the chat, use the react button, tell me if this is true. Does your agency struggle with measuring outcomes with actual data. Like you might be collecting a lot of data and say like, oh, we plowed this many miles this year. Yeah, but what does that mean? What's our intended outcome? Do you want to plow more miles, less miles? Like what? So we struggle with this. So this is what I encourage. Even though my sponsor left, and I only had one real one to show that we did really show executive team, here's my encouragement. Create the report anyway. Even if you feel like this cat when you're doing it and you're like, no one's gonna listen, no one's gonna look at it. Create the report anyway, because now you're planting the seed within your agency about the value that change management brings, and you're helping the agency get to a better place. Create the report anyway. And guess what? I did. This is fake. These aren't real numbers. What I did was once we got our new chief legal officer, her name is Val, I created this and I printed it off and I gave it to her and I said, Val, wouldn't it be nice if you had this? And she's like, okay, wait a minute, what? What is this? And then, her eye just got so big and she's like, oh man, to see this really quick, to know what the acknowledgement rate is, like what's our breakdown on violations? How many do we have? Did it go up or down from the last year? What's my team's caseload? Is it going up or down? What's our average days? She loved it. She was like, this is fantastic. I said, if you want to make this happen, that's talking with key people to pull together those stats. And I think you probably know who. If you want more help with it, come talk to me. At the end of the day, I couldn't make this happen for her. I need that sponsor to want this. So right now it still sits in her realm. It's been sitting, with her for the past 3 months. Maybe she'll call me up. I'm okay with that. As a practitioner, I've learned that we do our part. We need the parties to come halfway too, and you're totally willing to, be that border collie and help in all the ways. But I got to make sure that she actually wants it. But it worked. I mean, she definitely thought that it was valuable. So that's my encouragement too, is create the report. Even if you have zeros, even if you have no numbers. I've done that in project status reports because I've had difficulty getting numbers from a team that just doesn't want to give me numbers. So I put zeros or I put question marks and then I give it to my sponsor. It helps the agency get to a better place in knowing how to measure for success. Even if we aren't doing it well, at least we are thinking about it and we're starting to move in that direction. Okay. That's the end of my story. Policy acknowledgement is alive and well and thriving. Our overall rate is 93% for the entire agency. Still doing it, after a year. I think all of us are like, when's the next one again? No, wait, it's not the next quarter. Okay, we know, they hit every single quarter. And so to have a 93% acknowledgement rate over time is great. And I love that our policy manager, she does still track and record it and give those numbers to the executive leadership team halfway, 1 week left, and at the end, she still does that. And that was part of sustainment as well. So I'm going to turn this back over to you guys. Thanks for all of the reactions. That's what I love about Google Meet. I love the big reactions and stuff. I think they're fantastic. What questions do you have, comments? I would love to know, and I'll turn this back over to you, Masa, for whatever's hitting in the chat.
There are just lots of, we love it, love the idea, they're going to use it. I don't see any question as of now. Is there any question that anyone wants to ask? Please feel free to raise your hand using the emoji, or just unmute yourself and then ask the question, or even type it in the chat. Maybe there was a lot, so thank you so much. I'm sure everyone can, again, show appreciation by showing some reaction in the chat of how valuable this was. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing your time, your knowledge. This was fantastic. Okay.
I see Craig's. How many policies do they acknowledge? So we, based on initial data, they knew that when they had 72 violations, they broke it out and looked at the top policies that we have, and that's what informed how many we needed to acknowledge every year. So we have 9 total. So we have 2 to 3 policies that get pushed out every quarter that we acknowledge. So you only acknowledge that policy once a year, but we are on a cadence where we know it's coming every single quarter. So it helps us keep it in mind that we have policies that we need to know and care about every quarter. So yeah. Yeah, great question. Yeah, and I think someone also had a question like, you know, some of my examples, they're really just like, you know, they're pulling from all kinds of industries like citizen, you know, satisfaction. Like there's typically surveys, like we do have one that comes out from the governor's office that goes to citizens so we can track like their engagement with certain services and stuff. So there's data. That data, we also, for example, employees, we have an employee satisfaction survey that goes out to every single state agency. So those are lagging measures that already are collected about past performance that you can utilize. And so it's just a way to get creative with where lagging measures might be lurking around for you to use and leverage. Oh, thanks, Jennifer. Using a story. Yeah, policy acknowledgement was a really fun project, and I'm glad to just share what happened with it. And we did get success. Like I know with change management, like you're like, oh, is this ever working? And so I'm really happy to share with you guys as a practitioner, like it does work when you're applying. I know one of the biggest reasons why we got 93% in 2025 overall is because we did change management. Like I can just firmly believe it, because that email that goes out sucks. It looks really awful. It's a system generated email and we can't change the language. And I'm like, I know people would think it's spam. And so to get 93% acknowledgement was fantastic. And so I think change management for the win on that, and measuring our outcomes along the way.
Lubna, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, hi, Rachel, great presentation. Thank you so much. I would love to learn a little bit more. Right at the beginning, you mentioned that you did 50 presentations of the value of change management all throughout the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you would be willing to share some of those resources, and did you get pushback on that, or was it just like a quick kind of like show up at an all hands or a staff meeting and just share some tips and tricks?
Yeah, I definitely can. So what I did is I worked specifically with our leadership team to let them know what I was after. And so I worked diligently with each one of them to get in touch with their management teams to have me show up at their all hands in a bureau meeting or a division meeting, so smaller areas. And so it got me in front of frontline staff. That was my goal. And so I have a presentation. It has I use stories a lot. I think stories are just more fun. I'm way more likely to listen to someone if it's in a story. So I used a story about my first dog that we got, and because now my dog lives with 4 other animals. And so that was a change for him. And so I used just storytelling through that to understand the value of change management. I made it, I kept it engaging with them and asked, like, what's one thing that stops you from adopting a change? I do live interactive polling, and like one of the best the answers I got was like other people's attitudes. I'm like, oh, I hear you on that one. So I made a really strong point to give this presentation across the agency. And so I got to travel to all of our districts. Montana's a big state. You can drive in it for 11 hours and still be in the state. And so I got the opportunity to go visit parts of Montana I've never been and talk with staff there. And so that way they just knew. And I explained to them ADKAR. I shared with that. I used that as a really simple framework. I made it relatable to also their personal lives, just for those folks who were like, yeah, I come here to collect a paycheck, I'm good. I'm like, yeah, but I bet you this will help you as a parent. So I made it really relatable. And so I did over like 50 presentations in the span of like 3 or 4 months, just to really establish what change management is and who I am. And that, I think, is what's really helped, because then later on in town halls, you'll hear people, because our executive team loves to announce changes there, even though I tell them that's not a good idea. people will say like, well, where's the change management on this? So I love that because I'm like, yes, like I know it's landing and I know they get it and they know it's valuable. So that was a really, really, really effective measure. I would have never thought to do that. That is based on ProSci's enterprise change management playbook. They, in some of their facets for really building change competency from the ground up was socialization. And I'm like, oh, I can socialize the hell out of this. So, and that's what I did with just like some fun videos and pictures of my cats and dogs and sharing that, and it was relatable, and so I really recommend that tactic. It was definitely really great, and helping me be more approachable to people and just knowing who I am, especially because I'm a transplant. I'm not from Montana, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and so that doesn't help my situation. And so the storytelling, really great tactic. I highly recommend it if you guys can do that in your agencies. Just ask to get in front of a bureau meeting or something like that.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was a fantastic session, Rachel. Thank you so much. There was lots of engagement. Everyone got so much out of it. The recording of the session and Rachel's PowerPoint presentation will be up on the PSCP website. Before we go, we just want to give you guys a few announcements. So if you want to get the PMI PDUs, please don't forget to fill the form. I put the link in the chat. We do have a survey link. So if you want to present, or if you are interested in hearing a specific topic, please let us know. Also, anything you want to share back with Rachel, if there is a question or a feedback, please fill the form. We'll pass it along to Rachel. And don't forget to join us next time in April. We're going to have a fantastic presentation. It's going to be presented by Gary Van Such, Anna Brightly, Corey Bachman, and Michelle Malloy. The presentation will be about how the Colorado Department of Transportation, they went through their change management journey. So it's going to be a fantastic webinar, April 29th. 10 a.m. MST time, and we will tell you about the ProSci winner. So don't forget about that. Make sure that if you can contribute, because that's a meaningful way, and there is a great prize to win. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Rachel. It was fantastic. Thanks again for your time. Thanks, everyone, for participating. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Rachel.